All right, so just other typical housekeeping items. We're going to have folks mute when folks are presenting. The chat is available. We're going to keep an eye on the chat. Please chuck questions in there as they come up. We'll get to them as soon as possible. We'll also do a Q&A at the end. When we have Q&A, feel free to come off mute and just jump in there, kind of an informal approach. In the meantime, if folks don't mind using the chat to just for attendance purposes, share your name, your title, and your organization. That will also help us be able to circle back to folks with any questions or follow-up that comes up along the way. So again, today's webinar is, the purpose is just to share some guidance that we've found based on trends and to be available for questions for all of you and perhaps share some new information. And the focus is really on addiction service providers in the state of Indiana. On the agenda today, our clinical reviewers will first discuss the review process for addiction service providers, and then again, some trends and what to expect and that kind of thing. Our CANS and ANZA guru will come on and discuss the assessment tool as well as that review process, as well as some tips and tricks for everyone to help that process feel more helpful. And then finally, we're going to have Beth Kreidel join us from Recovery Cafe, hoping to link that discussion from treatment to recovery and talk about resources in the community as well. So I'll take a moment now to introduce the team, and I'm going to just kind of call on who makes sense. So Jennifer, do you mind coming off mute and introducing yourself?
Yeah, I am Jennifer Royer. I am a quality improvement reviewer on the clinical team.
And Mike Brunk.
Good morning, I'm Mike Brunk. I'm also a quality improvement reviewer on the clinical team.
And Miss Dominique.
Hello, my name is Dominique McCall, and I'm the CANS and ANZA validation reviewer.
And Miss Karen.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Karen McKinney. I'm the clinical services specialist with the QA team.
And Beth is going to join us a little bit late. So if you see her pop on, she'll introduce herself. She's coming in kind of the latter half. But that's us. That's who we are. Thanks for joining us. And Jennifer, I punt to you.
Okay, well, I am Jennifer Royer, like I said, and I am going to give just kind of a brief overview of what our quality improvement review process will look like. Agencies will be notified via email prior to the review date. Excuse me. Their email that we notify is what is on file with certification and licensure, so please keep those as up to date as possible. In state fiscal year 23, we were providing a 30-day notification period, but moving into fiscal year 24, we have moved to a 45-day notification to allow for more time to prepare. The notification will give details on the documentation that will need to be submitted in advance, including agency policies, randomly selected consumer charts, and employee training materials. For agencies that use DARMA, we will provide a list of DMHA selected consumers in the initial notification that we will be reviewing. Next slide, please. Thank you. Agencies that do not use DARMA will have 7 days to provide the QA team with a list of consumers who have started treatment within the most recent certification period, and this will also pertain to residential facilities as well. For remote reviews, the agency will have the option of providing EMR access to reviewers or uploading using a secure link that we will provide to you. And DMHA does determine whether the reviews are conducted remote or in person. For the client chart review, we mainly focus on the areas of intakes, treatment plans, discharges, and consumer rights documents. But we do ask for entire consumer charts and progress notes, medical notes, things like that, because our focus may shift year to year on what Indiana administrative code we are focusing on. Following the review, whether it is in person or virtual, we will set up a follow-up meeting to discuss our preliminary findings and answer any immediate questions the agencies may have. Within 30 days of the review, the agency will receive a detailed report from us that includes agency strengths, areas requiring corrective action, and a review summary. Within 30 days of the agency receiving that report, they will submit a corrective action plan or a CAP. This plan will document the changes being made in the agency and a timeline for that correction. We do have a template we can provide if the agencies would like it. Using it is completely optional, but it can just kind of show you what we kind of look for in those corrective action plans. After receiving the CAP, the QA team will review it. We may request follow-up documents or approve your approaches. And as always, the QA team is available during this process as you're preparing that corrective action plan for any questions you have or to offer any support you may need. And just as a reminder, the QA process is separate from certification. So just continue to upload those documents and respond to certification as you normally would. And now we're going to move into administrative code and documentation with Karen McKinney, I believe, is starting.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Karen McKinney. Next slide, please. One of the tools I wanted to talk about is relapse prevention planning, and as noted on the slide, it's often not completed for the consumer receiving addiction services. And a lot of times a relapse prevention plan can help them be better prepared for things such as triggers and cravings when they're out of treatment. Some things that are really important when looking at a relapse prevention plan for an individual is that it should be individualized to that consumer, noting their specific needs, concerns, fears, again, noted as cravings and triggers. The case manager and I've experienced the therapist should also be involved with that individual in creating their own relapse prevention plan. And it's certainly best practice to have the individual get a copy of their plan so that they can keep that on their person. What I've learned in my work with individuals is the plan is really something good to have in place for unexpected circumstances. Such as I remember somebody talking about, they went to the gas station to fill up their tank and they ran into their drug dealer who asked them if they wanted to buy something. And, those are unforeseen circumstances that having a plan in place can help someone know what to do when taken aback. Sometimes when, people are triggered or they're dealing with cravings, knowing what's going to work for them and having that documented, having that discussed can really be a powerful tool to help them maintain sobriety. One of the things that I have found is the relapse prevention plan minimizes impulsiveness, which is so typical with most individuals that use substances, but helping them be less impulsive and be more accountable and promote independence for development. There's sights and sounds and smells that can trigger someone, and if they're not aware of that, oftentimes, especially the first time that happens, they really don't know what to do because it's all about learning different behaviors, implementing different behaviors. So this relapse prevention planning is really a very helpful tool for the individual. Next slide, please. Safety planning. Reviewers often find consumers with any history of self-harm, suicidal ideation, or homicidal ideation without safety plans in the treatment plan or discharge or even in the chart. And what we know is when safety plans are being created, it's very, very important to individualize that to the consumer and also be developed with the case manager. Sometimes in my work, it's been with the therapist. It can be used to address, self-harming behaviors, suicidal, homicidal ideations, even domestic violence situations. It minimizes the impulsiveness and has accountability and independence development in it. One thing that is included in the safety plans are behaviors. What kind of behaviors could show other people that the individual is having a difficult time? The thing I think about often is isolation. If they notice that they're starting to isolate, not go to 12-step meetings, not calling their sponsor, not going to therapy, that's something that they can document on their safety plan as something to be aware of. Support people. The safety plans I've worked on, they have the name of the support person, and not only their name, but their phone number. And it's right there in front of them so that they have that information readily accessible. Another thing that I've seen on safety plans is not just support people, but even professionals who are support people with their title and their phone number as somebody that the person can reach out to if they feel like a crisis is developing. It can be noted things that people do to calm themselves, things that help, any warning signs, like I said, any triggers. So these are really, really important. And when I've done safety plans with people, certainly collaborated and worked together on those, and then also made sure to make a copy for that person to have it so they can keep it on their person, and really emphasize the importance of maintaining that safety plan on their person. And I think I will turn it on to the next person. Thanks so much.
Good morning again. My name is Mike Brunk, and I'm a quality improvement reviewer. The part that I will kind of address is related to some of the themes or the more common findings that we found in fiscal year 23. And that would be 5 things that we'll look at today. The one is treatment plans lacking individualization, demonstration of consumer involvement in creating the treatment plans. Natural support should be incorporated into the plan where appropriate, or if not, document why. Goals presenting problems often do not correlate with objectives and interventions. And then a little bit about discharge planning requirements. Next slide, please. As far as the treatment plans, one of the things that we've found is that they can be very similar from person to person in some settings. And I know that depending on the type of treatment that they're receiving, that can be difficult to avoid. But during the intake process, that's when we're often seeing the psychological assessments and the biopsychosocials being done. There's a wealth of information there that can kind of help individualize that treatment plan by pulling some of that in there as much as you can. Just looking to find the strengths and the needs that they have, and wherever possible, kind of working that into the actual treatment plan to help them achieve greater success. One of the ways that also helps with the individualization is to capture it in their words, basically, beginning with their goal. Why are they there? What is it that they're hoping to accomplish by the end of this process? And that obviously can be a host of reasons. Sometimes it's because they're doing it for their kids, or they just want to feel better. They're having too many problems in the different areas of their life, and it's just no longer sustainable. So including their words, it's helpful for them. It kind of shows that they are engaged, that they're being heard, actively heard. It also, I think, it goes a long way to showing that they have actually created some input and it's being implemented into it all. Next slide, please. So again, the individualization, it helps a lot with capturing their words. Also getting their signature is a huge part of that, because hopefully they've had the chance to have the whole thing kind of reviewed with them as it was developed. And if they can't provide a signature, One of the things that we find lacking sometimes is an evidence for why that might be the case. So it's really important to somewhere, even if it's in a progress note, just to show why they were unable to sign or that they were able to give verbal consent, and that's why the actual physical signature is lacking. Next slide, please. Natural supports are another way to help clients be more successful, and it also can kind of tie into the individualization part as well. Everybody kind of has a different constellation of people in their lives that may be able to help them in some ways, and that's something that I know can also be challenging. I've had a lot of clients who said that they really didn't have anybody in their life, and that's something to kind of pay attention to over time, because sometimes um, people don't always realize the extent of people that may be in their life. I've had a lot of times where people would say they didn't have anyone that could help with certain things, but then I would find out later that they were able to get something done or made it to an appointment or something. And I asked them, well, how are you able to do that? And well, my friend such and such was able to help me get there. So it's like, well, I mean, can they help in other ways then? Is that somebody that could kind of help become a part of an intervention or a strategy to help you get to other things or to meet some of your other goals? It can begin in the intake process all the way through to the treatment planning stage, just kind of always looking to capture the natural supports and bring them in wherever you can. Next slide, please. One of the other issues that we see with treatment planning is just the goals and the objectives don't always match with the strengths and needs and different elements of the treatment plan. So it's really important when people have entered into treatment, they've gone through the intake and they've identified their goal, seeing that all the pieces kind of link together to support that. Sometimes that is just a matter of making sure that things that happen and identified are acknowledged in some way and carried on through the whole process. Next slide, please. One of the things, maybe an example here would be that when people enter into intake, they can have a lot of different issues going on at the same time. And sometimes not all of those are addressed. They may focus on a few, but not on the totality of it, or at least defer, what they're going to choose and work on. And that should be driven by the client as much as possible as well. An example might be tobacco. There's times where we see that tobacco is an identified problem, and it's certainly something that can be used as a treatment plan goal, but for whatever reason, it's oftentimes not. And that's the case where it would be helpful for that to be deferred, or at least known why they aren't wanting to pursue that. It may be that that's personal choice. They just don't feel like that's what they want to work on, but having that noted somewhere is really helpful, I think, to everyone involved, even again, if it's in a progress note. Next slide, please. Finally, on the discharges, there's some things that Indiana code requires be present in a discharge summary, and that includes the overall summary or final evaluation of treatment, progress on each treatment plan goal, and recommendations for aftercare, as well as it being reviewed by the consumer, much like the treatment plan. We don't usually find too much difficulty in there being a summary or an evaluation of it, but we do often find that the final evaluation is kind of used to summarize all the goal stuff. So there isn't anything that kind of says where they were successful on their goals or their objectives individually. It's just kind of lumped together. So that's an area that is sometimes appears in corrective action plans. Recommendations for aftercare are important. Those can be sometimes hit or miss in what we've found. Some of the places will have a pretty robust set of recommendations for where people will go, and have even set up appointments and whatnot, and identified who the providers will be. In other instances, that information has been less clear. So recommendations, that aftercare piece can be pretty important too, and making sure that they continue a pattern of success after they've left the agency. And then reviewed by the consumer, it's important for them to kind of see the progress they've made, or where they may still have areas for growth, or another identified avenue for where they can try to get where they want to be in their life. Sometimes we find that if the person successfully completed the program, it's easier to capture that review process and they have signed off on it. Obviously, when they have dropped out or something like that, that becomes a much bigger challenge, and we recognize that. That's an instance where if you can document in some way that it was mailed to them, that there was some effort to kind of get that plan to them in some way. It may not be that it was reviewed by them per se, but it's the best alternative for trying to make sure that that reaches them. Next slide, please. We'll just pause here for a moment. What drives what we review is really the Indiana Administrative Code, and in some settings it can be the SAPT block grant contracts, but the IAC is really what kind of pushes a lot of what we're looking for, and these are links where you can find out information that hopefully might be helpful in that. Next slide. At this point, are there any questions before we move into the next part?
There was one question in the chat from Emily. Let me see. Does DMHA anticipate that in the future will integrate processes between the QA, QI team and licensure and certification? In the past few years, there's been a need to submit the same documents repeatedly to DMHA for a variety of reasons. So, Emily, this is a really great question for a lot of reasons. One, just to let you know that as this team evolved our QA, QI practices in the past, over the past year, we very carefully, painstakingly met with the certain licensure team to review what it was that we needed to look at and what do they have already. And part of our QA process in preparing is to go to the certain licensure team and harvest from them what they already have. So we avoid asking for those documents again wherever we can. Times that we do ask for documents that may seem like you've already provided them are times when those documents are potentially living, breathing documents for agencies. We know that as agencies evolve, sometimes you have to update your own policies and practices and those sorts of things. And it's a great way for us to keep our finger on the pulse of those updates. And we do share the information with certain licensure as well. So we have our background communication going on. So I wanted you to know that does occur. If we ever have gaps in that, and you've experienced that, and you can email us and give us illuminate for us where we have a blind spot, we're fully open to being guided towards our awareness. So give us a prompt, let us know. We can always improve. But then leading up really to the true answer to your question is yes. And some of you have heard us talk about this, but DMHA is currently working on a provider portal. And I know that we've been talking about this at close-up discussions for about a year now, and we thought we would have it around Christmas of last year, and now it looks like it'll be around Christmas of this year. But DMHA is working with Salesforce to create a system where providers will have their own portal page that will have all the information about your agency, and that page will be used by certification and licensure, the QA/QI team, and used for instant reporting, and will allow us to communicate with each other through that system, and than through email, and that everything be in one spot, and so that we can see what notifications and letters have gone out. We can see what documentation or responses have come in, and both kind of be able to see it in one spot. So we've known that has been a need for a long time. It's always slow to make change at the state, and even slower to make change with technology. So we apologize for the delay. We want it as much as the providers in the field want it too. So there will be, I think there's going to be a period where there's some stakeholder feedback on it as well. So there will be an outreach to come to a training and an outreach for stakeholder feedback. So be on the lookout for that, so you can come and share what would be helpful for you in using that tool. So to be continued. I do giggle because we've been trying to announce it for a long time, and it feels like there's just been more and more delays. Emily, did that answer your question, or did you feel like you wanted to talk about another aspect?
Nope, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Any other questions before we move on to the next portion? All right, I think it's Dominique.
Hello again, my name is Dominique McCall, and I'm going to discuss creating quality documentation with the CANS and ANZA. So bear with me for a little bit longer. Second of all, I wanted to say great job, Karen, Mike, and Jennifer. I wanted to provide these resources if a full overview of the CANS and ANZA is needed. This is the current CANS and ANZA training information. As I mentioned, a full overview of the CANS and ANZA is available from the CANS and ANZA training and technical assistant team, which includes Betty Walton, Stephanie Moynihan, and Sei Hong from the Indiana University School of Social Work. All this information, the registration opportunities, can be found on Dharma under the website training tab. And for reference, the next booster workshop for certified users is scheduled for August 8th. Overview of the CANS and ANZA review process. The CANS and ANZA review process is relatively the same as the clinical review process. One thing I always mention is when I provide a client list, that you review that list prior to our review date and let me know if there are any clients that are medication only. So I will have time to replace those with different selection of clients. The review, the post review, and the CAP process also follows the same outline as the clinical team described. Oh, strengths. As you all know, strengths are the individual's assets, the areas in life where they are doing well or have an interest or ability. Rating a 0 or 1 identifies the strength that could be used for strength-based planning, and a 2 or 3 are ratings of strengths that should be focused on strength-building activities when appropriate. The themes that we found from the past year, I often find item names from the strengths domain as a description of what strengths the client has, family strengths, talent, interests, volunteering, natural supports, or short phrases. Client is optimistic for optimism, identifies supports for natural supports, or shows resilience for resiliency. Only providing a statement in the client's words, kind, funny, likes to help, desire for change, strong and determined. Uh, when documenting in this way, it doesn't provide the evidence to support, it doesn't always provide the evidence to support the rating. That's why we always ask for an individualized description. Ways to document evidence for 0, 1s, and 2s. For useful strengths, we ask for you to include evidence that the strength exists, it is accessible, and or could be used in a plan or to support their well-being. For buildable strengths, we ask that you provide evidence that the need exists but requires development to become useful. This is an example of the process that could be used to show supportive evidence for strength. Needs are areas where an individual requires help or serious intervention. Actionable needs are ratings of 2 or 3 suggest that the area may be addressed on the service or treatment plan. Documenting needs, the themes that we found from the previous year, needs descriptions that don't relate to the reference guide description, substance use, documenting tobacco recovery, or bullying, documenting the client being bullied. Needs rated, but no plan or evidence provided. Caregiver needs and resources domain is often not addressed in the treatment plan. A list of item names from a needs domain, just the item name from the manual or reference guide, I'm sorry, suicide risk, depression, or legal, or needs addressed on the treatment plan but not rated on the CANS or ANZA. Documenting needs, 2s or 3s. For actionable needs, provide evidence that the need exists and interferes with functioning, and demonstration of evidence by providing a rationale of why an item is rated or scored the way it was. And here is an example of documenting those needs, or one of those needs. What I often call deferred needs, the need may exist, but not need to be on the treatment plan, as is deferred by the client, family, or the treatment team for whatever reason. Also, it could be referred out to another agency, but the documented evidence connecting to the rating should still be present somewhere in the client file. Provide a rationale for why you scored the item. That's what we're looking for, the rationale of why you scored the item on the CANS or ANZA, but it's not represented on the treatment plan. Changes in the treatment plan. An individual treatment plan can and should evolve, and progress should be reflected in the reassessment. Not meeting goals or objectives leads to a change in the treatment plan. So during our review, what we're looking for when we're comparing however many treatment plans we have available between 1 and 4, we're looking for new or revised objectives, items that have been removed, or strengths that may have been added. These topics on preparing the treatment plan and identifying changes in the treatment plan can be found from the review of the PRATE Foundation's revised action planning guidelines, action planning from a TCOM perspective. Individual summary report. This is a report that provides a snapshot of identified useful buildable strengths and actionable needs based on the CANS and ANZA assessment. I provided the steps on how to get that report emailed to you specifically, and this is what it looks like. I know it's a little small, but hopefully you've seen it before. But I would like to provide the steps on how to get that sent to you if that interests you. It has been described as a helpful tool to others. It can be also shared with the family to support planning and to discuss progress. Announcements. As many of you may be aware, there have been revisions to the cans and ends and manuals, now called reference guides. I'm still getting used to that too. They're now available on the DMHA website. So we encourage clinicians and super users to review those new reference guides and identify the changes while writing the tools. Set aside some time to renew your cans and ends and certification and register for an upcoming booster where all those changes will be discussed. These are some of the resources that I use to support the topics today. And now for any questions.
Dominic, I didn't see any questions come into the chat either. So if we don't have any questions about the cans and ANSA, then we have our lovely Beth. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry, Dominique. I missed that page. Am I covering this? I guess I am. Here's the link for incident reporting for those of you who need it, and contact information if you have any questions about the incident reporting process or issues with that web page. Now, I'm sorry, I was moving to introducing Beth from Recovery Cafes, and we're not going to screen share. Beth, you're going to screen share your own slides. Is that right? Okay,
Correct.
perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go. So shall I go ahead and get started?
Yeah, the stage is yours, Miss. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Beth Kreidel. I use she, her pronouns, and I serve as the executive director and co-founder of We Bloom. And our primary role is that we serve as the Midwest Regional Catalyst for the Recovery Cafe Network, which is kind of a long title, but basically it means that we come alongside communities in Indiana and the surrounding states to really facilitate a process of exploring whether this Recovery Cafe model is a good fit for the community. And then we walk alongside from there all the way through the process of getting their doors open and then functioning at the cafe. So it's really a joy to be here with you today. One of my big goals that I spoke with Elaine about is I really more integration of the recovery cafes into our continuum of care. And a lot of that involves providers such as yourselves really knowing about these supports and being able to hopefully link your patients and clients to one of the 17 cafes we have around the state. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just kind of quickly go over the core elements of the model and then allow a chance for some conversation and discussion and questions that you might have. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can you all see me?
Yep, we can. You're good. Thank you.
I meant to say see the screen. Okay, so the Recovery Cafe at its heart is really a love-based peer recovery model. And I'd like to share a little bit about the background, just to give you that context. It did actually start, the very first Recovery Cafe started in Seattle 20 years ago. So it's not a new model, but it wasn't until 2016, so I guess that's 7 years ago now, that the Recovery Cafe Network started, which is really a structure that was put in place to provide support for communities who wanted to start recovery cafes in their own local areas. And so if we flash forward to today, we now have over 61 cafes in the national network, with, as I mentioned, 17 of those being right here in Indiana. I'm going to share a list of those locations with a map. I'll have those emailed out to all of you, Elaine, if that's okay, so that you all have that information and have our website so you can reach out to them. But it's really exciting to see that kind of cluster of cafes there in the Midwest. So, model is this belief that we all start off with love at our core. And so it's this idea that when you get down to the core, to the center of every human being, there's this source of pure love. And that through the process of being raised by imperfect caretakers, things start happening to us that disconnect us from that love source. So those are things like, being hurt, experiencing pain, experiencing betrayal, maybe experiencing some kind of abuse or neglect, things that really start to cause us not to trust. And as we grow and evolve as humans, then we start developing coping skills. And you all know about that, right? There's all kinds of things that we develop even when we're young. Maybe if I do really well in school, maybe if I'm a perfect person, maybe if I act out, I'll get some of my needs met. And those things evolve and grow into things like, people pleasing and perfectionism, codependency, substance use, mental health challenges. And so the Recovery Cafe model is really all about restoring that connection to that place of pure love within ourselves and with each other. And so that takes me to a really important element of this model, which are the guiding principles. So when you come into a Recovery Cafe, you won't see a list of rules and do's and don'ts. Instead, you'll be greeted by hopefully a very warm, loving welcome and an understanding of what these guiding principles are really about. So if you take a look at them, showing respect, cultivating compassion, giving back, connecting with love of ourselves and others, practicing forgiveness and encouraging growth, all of those really become practices. And so in the community life, in the cafe, we practice these principles in relationship both with ourselves, to thinking about what does it look like and mean for me to cultivate compassion for me? What does it look like to practice forgiving myself? What does respect for myself look like? And so really cultivating that connection with self to then be able to share that love and that connection and compassion with others. These are principles we come back to on a daily basis. So they're really the formation of the entire program. Another important element of this model, and one that I think is especially important for you all, is this idea that we define recovery in a very distinct way. So a lot of times when folks hear the word recovery, they immediately think of substance use, drugs and alcohol, sometimes mental health. And while that is certainly a big recovery challenge that we see in our cafes, we really see recovery as this path that every human being in essence can be on, that we're all recovering from whatever it is that keeps us from being our most authentic and true self. And if those were some of those things I was talking about before, maybe it's overworking, over exercising, like I said, pleasing, or maybe it is substance use and mental health challenges. And certainly we see a lot of that in our cafes, but just this understanding that we have a very broad, holistic, inclusive definition of recovery. And we believe that folks are in recovery whenever they say they are. Not when, maybe I as a peer or you as a clinician, but really folks are in recovery when they make that decision. And we also support all pathways to recovery. So whether that means someone is participating in group therapy, they're in 12-step or smart recovery, maybe they're on their own kind of solo journey, or they're in medical assisted recovery. Maybe they don't even identify as being in recovery when they get to the cafe. All of that is welcomed and supported and encouraged in our cafes. So that was one of the things that we saw when we began the first cafe 4 years ago is that there weren't really that many places to go for that long-term recovery support outside of 12 steps and faith-based communities. And in addition to that, where could folks go and really deal with both mental health and substance use? So this is really an ideal part of the model that we feel makes it accessible to a lot of the people that we know are in need of this kind of support. So the other really big element of the model is that it is membership based. And we created this membership based component because we want people to experience truly a sense of belonging. And by that, we mean an opportunity to love and be loved, to know and be known on a really deep level. And so membership means three things for us. It's committing to, when you're in the space, being drug and alcohol free. That just means that we want folks to be present. We want them to be able to give and receive information and participate. We want them to be able to add to that sense of community rather than being disruptive or causing chaos in the space. So this is really all about behavior. We're not an abstinence-based program by any means. We fully support medical assisted recovery, but when folks are in the space, we do ask them to be able to be present and connected. So that's one commitment. Another one is we ask folks to participate in a weekly recovery circle. And I'll explain what that means in just a moment, but that's really an integral part of the model. And then we also really invite folks to consider, what are my gifts and talents? Sometimes people forget, their lives may have taken them in such a way that they've become disconnected from that, even that sense of identity of, I have value, I have worth. There are things that I can give back. And so that may look in the beginning like simply showing up and being present. And then maybe it looks like participating in recovery circles or in conversation. And then maybe it starts to look like helping to take care of the cafe space itself through cleaning, the tables, the floors, the restrooms. It may look like helping with the kitchen. Some of our members, we hope to raise up as member leaders and allow them to get trained as peer recovery coaches and start facilitating recovery circles and classes. Maybe it's being a cafe companion and providing that hospitality in the space. So there's all kinds of ways that we ask for our members to really take a sense of ownership of the cafe. This is my recovery cafe. This is a peer-led and peer-run space. There isn't a financial cost for membership, but certainly there is a cost of time and of giving of yourself. So when we look at what are the different components of a recovery cafe, there's some essential things you'll see in each cafe that you would walk into across the state and around the country. And one of those is to have this, what we call kind of an open healing milieu, so a large cafe-like space that ideally is welcoming and friendly and communicates the love, the hospitality, the connection that we hope is happening there. So that can be a place where whenever the recovery cafe is open, which is typically they start at 3 days a week and work their way up to 5 or 6, that any of those days our members can be in the space. There's a requirement to come to the weekly circle, but we hope that our members will be there as often as they can and stay as long as they can. So that space is a place to have coffee, to have meals, to enjoy connecting, playing games, maybe just hanging out, reading, journaling, whatever that may look like. We do have a community mealtime each day that we're open. So we have 5 minutes of silence. We do celebrations and announcements, and then we break bread and connect together. The other 4 things you'll see are recovery circles, the School for Recovery, sober social events, and recovery resources. So I mentioned before that recovery circles are really, in some ways, the glue that holds this model together. And what I mean by that is the cafes are all about creating a place to be in community. So it's place-based community. At the same time, we want people to have that experience of being known and being loved. And so the circles provide that consistent small group of people that really are going to be there for you to check in every week. So we see this as a form of loving accountability where we say, okay, we want you to be part of this community And one of the commitments you make is to show up each week for your circle. And of course, there's going to be days and weeks where you can't do that. So we'll ask you to communicate and just let us know. So what happens in a circle is it's essentially a check-in. So we talk about what are my challenges this week in recovery, where's their growth and gratitude, and then what is my goal or my intention for next week. And we have blended recovery circles, meaning we don't separate folks out by the type of challenges they're dealing with. So we don't say if you're in substance use recovery, you're over here in this circle. If you're dealing with mental health, you're here. If you're dealing with trauma, you're there. We don't do it that way. We have everybody come together and connect as humans, and folks can share about anything they want. So they can bring their whole selves. I'm struggling with my family this week. I'm really having a hard time with finding a job. My housing situation is horrible. My mental health is really suffering. I'm dealing with lots of cravings, whatever that is, it's a challenge. And then really getting into that space of gratitude. What is one thing that's going well, no matter how small it may be? And then that goal setting is really about that invitation to look into the future and say, what's one thing in this next week that I can do for myself? And to hear other people setting those goals is encouraging. It promotes that positivity and that hope. And it also is a place where you can get checked in on. So you set that goal to start walking 3 times a week. How is that going for you? What barriers are you having? What are we celebrating today? So those are facilitated by a peer recovery coach. And there is an opportunity for members to receive feedback from each other. That feedback is really a gift. It's an offering of support and encouragement. It's not advice giving. It's not fixing. So there's a lot of coaching that we need to do around that feedback piece. In addition to the recovery circles, each cafe has the opportunity to build out its own unique school for recovery. And so there's not a defined or predefined curriculum that is set forth by the model. Instead, we say, let's look at those 4 dimensions of recovery: home, health, community, and purpose. And even more so, what are the members in our community? What are we noticing? So when you start a new cafe, it's really about getting that healing space, that cafe space in motion, getting your circles started, your meals. And then once you start to have a base of members, that's when we say, what are things that we're hearing? What do members want to see in their space? And so these are some examples of things. If you go to cafes, you'll see all kinds of exciting, and I want to say optional opportunities. So the School for Recovery is not required for members, so they don't have to participate. And this allows us to offer pathway-specific kinds of programs. So maybe members want to see let's say a Celebrate Recovery class, or a Recovery Dharma workshop, or maybe a 12-step study. So it may also look like cooking skills, culinary skills, nutrition, yoga, meditation, relapse prevention, writing, different types of music. So this is really wide open for the cafes to get creative and really be responsive to the community. These cafes, these classes are typically facilitated by community partners. So we may have, for example, a bank that comes in and teaches a financial management class. We may have Purdue Extension come in to teach a culinary class. We also may have community volunteers who come and teach classes. So that's really the model. These are not necessarily taught by staff, but it's an opportunity to really connect and bring in providers, volunteers, and et cetera into your cafe space. The other thing we have is our sober social events, and these also are completely open for what the members in that community would like to see. So again, here we have things like open mic nights. We'll celebrate holidays. We may have self-care events. There's outdoor barbecues, the recovery ballroom. There are all kinds of different fun events that we know are so needed in recovery. And some cafes offer these once a month, twice a month, every week. It just kind of depends on, again, what does that cafe need? and what are their members wanting. Then the last piece of this, the elements of the model really align around recovery resources. And so think about the cafe as kind of a connecting hub. So we, of course, can't be everything to everyone, but rather we want to have those inflowing and outflowing referrals coming in and out. So maybe we have members, that are referred by you all or by a recovery housing program. Maybe it's a referral from a mental health provider. Maybe it's someone who's just walking by and sees and needs our support and our services. So we really want to be that hub of connection and support where we have those warm handoffs, as I was mentioning, to different providers, kind of our core group of providers. We bring folks in to do what we call recovery spotlight. So that may be a great opportunity for you to partner with one of our recovery cafes, is to come in and talk about the supports and services that you provide. And that way, members get to know you and have that personal connection, and so do the staff. So those referrals become more relational and non-transactional. We also do recovery resource fairs. We provide one-on-one peer recovery coaching. So that's, of course, another place where there's a lot of referrals being made. And then we also provide recovery action plans for members who want to really look more holistically at their recovery goals. Finally here, I just want to show you a couple of examples of what life in the cafe can look like. Like I said, when cafes first open, it's usually 3 days a week, working up to 4 or 5 and sometimes 6. And so the cafe has recovery circles happening on any given day. We have school for recovery classes, new member introductions. So when you first come to the cafe, you're welcomed as a guest for up to 3 times. And at that point, we'll kind of have the conversation about joining a new member introduction and learning what does it mean to become part of this love-based community. There will also be shops, volunteer orientations. We have meals each time we're open. So again, it's not a set program where I have to come at 1 and be here until 5, or come in at 1 and stay to 7. It's really about coming to your circle, but then figuring out what are all the different times and days and ways that I want to be involved. Because like I said, as part of our radical hospitality, we really want members to be with us as many days as they can and for as long as they can. This is the representation of a cafe this is the Indie Cafe, and it's a sample of our program calendar. So we do offer classes and circles throughout the day, every day that we're open. So you can see those in different colors or classes. And it just kind of gives you an idea of what a cafe will look like as it continues to grow and evolve over time. So I wanted to mention that really the goal of the cafe is around building relationships. And even more than that, being that safe haven, that refuge. You might get to us before you ever go to treatment, but certainly we want to be there as folks are either coming out of inpatient, maybe they're in outpatient. They're seeing you for that addiction support, helping them get into recovery and to establish a supportive, loving place where they can come and build community. They can come and be known. They can become a leader if that feels right for them, and really create this community of love and connection over the long term. So I'm going to pause here. I know I've shared a lot of information. There's more I can share, and Elaine, I'll send the whole PDF as a PowerPoint. The PowerPoint is a PDF to you, so you can share that. But that also has information about maybe you're in a community where there isn't a recovery cafe and you're thinking, hey, how can we get one of these started? So that's, of course, part of my role as well. So I can share information with any of you who may be interested in that too. So I'm going to stop sharing and open us up for questions at this time. Or Elaine, if there was anything you had wanted to prompt or add, I'm happy to address that too.
Well, I did want to ask, and this may not be available, but while folks are thinking of what they might want to ask you,
Yeah.
do you have, and I know you popped up the national map of where recovery cafes are nationally.
Yeah.
Do you have our Indiana map by any chance?
I sure do. And I meant to pop that into my PowerPoint deck and I didn't. So give me 1 second and I'm going to pull that right up and I'll
That's
share my
okay.
screen again.
Yeah, I think it would just help folks to conceptualize. Maybe folks don't even know that they have one near them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll definitely be sure to share this as well. So let me go ahead and share my screen here again, if that's okay. Let's see, get this all the way open. Sometimes my computer decides to run at a snail pace. So 1 second.
I put
Okay.
you on the spot a little bit. It wasn't fair.
Oh, no worries.
Sorry.
No, this should have been in the PowerPoint already. So here is, you can see the little red pins represent existing recovery cafes that are open. And then we have, where is that little, there we go. Then we also have what we call discovery cafes. And so those are youth. It's kind of a youth adapted version of the model. So we currently have 4 of those going, which you can see are in Tippecanoe, Howard County, Hancock, and Marion County. And then there are 3 cafes in green that will be opening this summer, ideally hopefully in August, maybe September. And so this kind of shows you where the footprint is for the moment of where our cafes are. So I'll again pause here and see what questions or ideas, any ideas that you have about how we can really be more connected and be in that referral ecosystem I talked about. I'm all ears for that. So any questions or thoughts here?
I did also offer up in the chat your email address and encouraged, for some agencies, they may want to ask their case managers or patient navigators to reach out, if not themselves, to you. And then I also offered if anyone would like to get connected to you by way of us at DMHA to pop their name in the chat, and one victim did. So we'll get you connected later today for sure.
That would be awesome. And
Mhm.
I will follow up, like I said, with the map, with this list, also with the website where you can kind of link right to the whole list of recovery cafes in the state and then click on the individual websites. The other thing is I will include as well the directory. So that way, if you want to reach out directly to a staff person, I would recommend reaching out to the director, the executive director. I'm also very happy to make that direct connection for you. So we want to make that as easy as possible. And a lot of times what I encourage providers to do is just to set up a time or just come into the space and have a tour, really see what the community is about. And that really, I think, helps you in making referrals and kind of talking about it. So that would be a warm and hoped for invitation for you to come in and see us as well. And I'll also send, let's see, well, no, because you really want the customized flyer. I was going to say every cafe has flyers, websites, social media. So, Elaine, one thing I had also wondered about was if it's possible, and folks are interested, we can even make the link directly to the cafe and send the email. So like I said, I'm very happy to do that if that makes it easier for you all.
Yeah, we'll facilitate however we can, for sure. Yes, Kara, for sure. We will get out slides. whether those go out via email or the listserv or the website, we haven't decided yet. It'll just be whatever is most efficient. But yeah, we'll definitely make sure these are posted and work on getting the presentation posted to the website too. So, but I'm not hearing specific questions for Beth and Recovery Cafe and collaborations or questions about the culture or how to get one started or anything like that. Maybe while folks are thinking about Beth's presentation, I wanted to circle back to Susan had a question about the Cans and ANSA summary report. In short, how to navigate the development of a treatment plan when that summary report isn't available until the day after you've completed your assessment and likely treatment plan. Susan, what I would say is on the summary report is a great tool for kind of snapshotting needs and strengths and actionable items, but I would say generally that clinicians can see those zeros and ones strengths pretty quickly, and their twos and threes, and they're having a discussion with the individual or the family or the caregivers, and knowing what folks are going to be wanting to prioritize. So it's okay to make that treatment plan without that summary report, but that tool is available. So maybe when you get back in that report and you print it off the next day and you look back at the plan you made with the individual or their family or what have you, that becomes another way of having a conversation in the treatment process of, taking that report back and saying, did we incorporate everything that we wanted to on this first time around, right? Treatment plans are living, breathing documents, and can should be updated as new information comes along. So I would just treat that summary report as a tool in that way, that it just becomes a way to confirm you got on the treatment plan what was wanted, or maybe to use it as a conversation tool to incorporate something that was initially missed. Susan, did that answer your question, or did that leave you with more questions? And maybe Susan's not here and I answered it for the group anyway. Oh, there you are.
Sorry.
Yep. That's okay. Yeah,
Okay.
we can now. Yep.
Yeah. I think that was helpful. I don't know that it solves a lot for us, just in terms of, our clinicians are probably not going to be able to take the time to review the next day the treatment plans that they worked on the day before. So while I appreciate the help and the thought of that, I just am not sure it really solves it for us. We were cited pretty heavily on some of those QA visit. And so we're trying to address those, but I'm just not sure that there's the best way to do that without having that summary quicker for our folks. But it's okay. We'll continue to work on some solutions and hopefully be able to score better on the next quality assurance visit.
Susan, is there maybe some other folks at your agency that could spearhead that follow-up, like maybe somebody who's in quality or something like that, that can, pull reports and crosswalk them against the treatment plan and follow up with the clinician as maybe a nudge and maybe thinking about it that way?
Yeah, we'll work on that.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we can, Susan, feel free to reach out offline and we can set up a time to brainstorm and talk with you. We're here for support for sure. I appreciate that you're wanting to use the summary report. It is a helpful tool. So yeah, let's get together and help brainstorm. Yeah, no, thank you. Beth, thank you for sharing about recovery cafes. And I mean, I think it's such an important part of what's in the community. And I think it's an important option available for our providers to refer to, and also for you to know who maybe your guests may need to go back to and connect with if they're needing some increased supports. So, you know, I think it's a symbiotic relationship that we have, and I'm grateful that you could come and share with us today.
Well, pardon me, I'm so happy to do it, and I will have my contact info, the list, the website, the list of the cafes, the map, everything in the PDF I send as a follow-up, and would just love to hear from any and all of you. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the crowd before we part ways? Anything that you hope to have answered that we didn't address? Right. Well, we are so grateful for your time and your thoughts, and we are here for support. So reach out to us with anything that you might need, and we'd be happy to get connected. So thank you, everyone. Have a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.